Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unexpected Goals. This is your Premier League Match Week 29? 29. Wow, the season's flying by. Preview. Just like last week, we're going to kind of do the same exact thing. We're just going to go through every single match. We only have eight Premier League matches. We have obviously the EFL Cup final is on Sunday. If you'd like to get my thoughts on that match, I'm going to write up a full preview which should be out Friday on my Substack. I'll make it free and available to everyone. Gonna go a little bit more in depth than I usually would on a, Premier League notes article or something like that. If you're new to this, what we're gonna do is basically go match by match, and we're just gonna analyze everything from both an in possession, out of possession perspective for each individual match. There will be no betting advice in this one. Again, I'm trying to do something a little bit different, reach a wider audience. I'll just say also off the top, again, like I mentioned last week, if you are somebody who has experience editing videos or editing podcasts, and you'd like to help me out, I cannot pay you, but if you'd like to help me out, I would greatly appreciate anybody giving me any help. So, again, this is just the raw audio because I don't know how to edit podcasts. So, we'll see how it goes. So hopefully, I don't screw up along the way. All right, let's kick things off. First up, let's start with Everton West Ham. 10 a.m. Central Time. I don't think the clocks will have turned back by then. Maybe they won't. I'm not sure. I'm not very good with daylight savings in between England and the United States. But in any case, Everton versus West Ham. So Everton in possession. They can't lose under Moyes. It's crazy. Uh, Results been good. Underlying performance metrics have been really impressive as well. Plus 4.3 expected goal differential since Moyes took over. Offensive numbers are obviously much better than they were under Sean Dyche because they're a team that can actually control possession, play to the back, pass the ball around a little bit rather than just playing direct balls up to their forwards. And, against Wolves in their previous match, there's something I want to highlight that was something that David Moyes did at West Ham, which was switching the play, switch balls across the pitch. Both of Everton's best chances from open play, they could create a couple big chances off of set pieces, which is going to be big in this match because Wolves have allowed a ton of goals off of set pieces. But in any case, from open play, two of their best chances came off switch balls, and the goal to Jack Harrison was when Jesper Lindstrom just played a ball right across the face when he was getting in between the lines of Wolves' defensive block. And I think that's something important to note because it adds an extra element to what Everton can be offensively. Obviously, they have the element of being able to use passing triangles, building out of the back, 4-2-4, allow Minkolenko to get up that left wing and create a back five. But those switch balls, if they're able to do it, can be effective. Last season at West Ham, David Moyes' team led the Premier League in switch balls, 158. Next closest was Liverpool at 154. So, why is that important in this match? Well, West Ham has transitioned to a 5-3-2 low block under Graham Potter. Very, very narrow. If you watch their last match against Newcastle, I included a screenshot from that match. And the 5-3-2 is very narrow, trying to prevent teams, obviously, from playing through the middle, which is very important. But using those switch balls to play across the face or to move defensive blocks and try to get them out of position, I think that could be somewhat of an advantage here for Everton in this match. And again, like I mentioned, set pieces are going to be huge. Why did I mention Wolves? Oh, because they played Wolves in the previous match. I apologize. I think I said it's going to be a huge advantage against Wolves, who have conceded a bunch of goals off of set pieces. They're not playing Wolves. They're playing West Ham, who is actually the best set piece defending team in the Premier League right now by XG per set piece. So, interesting match here, but look for Everton maybe to play those switch balls to try to get West Ham's defensive block out of uh, out of sorts. From a West Ham in possession perspective versus Everton out of possession, wide overloads have been the name of the game for Graham Potter's West Ham. They're playing a 3-5-2, and because they don't have a recognized striker, they're playing Kudus and Bowen as their two strikers, and Bowen is often the one getting out wide and playing really as his role like he did for a long time as a winger. One of the good chances that West Ham created in the match was him combining out wide with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and it allowed Souček to really push forward into the half space and cause a lot of problems as like a box crashing midfielder, which is something he's obviously been very good at over his career. So, if you're looking for how do they break, Everton down, it can be, situations like that specifically. Everton has struggled defending crosses for most of the season, which is kind of weird because they do have two really good aerial uh, aerial defenders in the box and Branthwaite and Tarkovsky, but they've actually allowed a really high number of crosses into the penalty area. In fact, 17th in crosses allowed in the penalty area, which is not very good. Um, Now, with that being said, West Ham, yeah, maybe they can create some chances off crosses here. Soychek's really the only aerial threat that they have in the box. But under Graham Potter, 8 matches in the Premier League, 7.7 expected goals. So even though you want to overload the wide areas, it's still very difficult to create chances from out there. And Everton's still pressing high. They're still pressing high like they were under Deitch. They're still causing a lot of problems against Wolves. 28 danger zone losses, seven of those leading to a shot, which is a very, very high number. Teams typically average only about two or three per match. So the thing is if Everton's able to force West Ham to play direct here, they're going to win a lot of those duels. They're going to win a lot of those second balls, and they're going to neutralize anything West Ham can really do. So, very difficult match here for West Ham to actually, I think, create really any high quality chances. All right, Ipswich Town, Nottingham Forest. These two just played in the FA Cup. 1-1 ended on Nottingham Forest went through on penalties, but really not a lot happening in the match. And I think the match has kind of highlighted the limitations of what Ipswich really is. Is that I've said this before, but they're basically just a let's just send a long ball up to Leon Delap and let's hope he can do something with it because they really have no other route. They're not a good build-up team. They're not a team that's set up to play direct. They're dealing with a lot of injuries offensively right now. So trying to do that against Nottingham Forest is just not going to happen. And that's what happened in that FA Cup match. They scored a goal off of a set piece, but zero point 0.4 expected goals, I believe, from open play against Nottingham Forest. So just I just don't really see how it's really going to work here. They're going to have to take advantage of those set pieces. You can say, yes, hey, they created 1.5 expected goals against Crystal Palace. But between the two meetings with Nottingham Forest, the FA Cup match and the previous Premier League match, 1.4 total expected goals. I just don't really see a method here because Nottingham Forest is not going to press them. They're just going to basically sit in and just say, hey, you want to try to play those direct balls over the top? Like, go ahead. You're not going to be able to do that. And you're also not going to be able to build through us because you can't play through the middle. So I don't know. Maybe they can nick across here, getting the ball out wide. I'm not really sure how they're going to create chances. For Nottingham Forest, though, they struggled in that FA Cup match to create chances. 22 shots over the course of 120 minutes. A lot of them incredibly low quality. If you go to my Premier League notes article on my Substack, I included the shot map from that. There is just so many red dots outside the 18-yard box. Just a basically just a case of Ipswich Town sitting in that 5-3-2 low block, just daring Nottingham Forest to take those type of shots, and they did. And Nottingham Forest ended up with zero point 0.7 expected goals from open play. They were pretty effective on set pieces, which is something they'll probably have to do in this match. But you know, the thing about it is for Nottingham Forest is like they're obviously a transition team. With great ball carriers like Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs White, they can really cut through opponents, through the middle. But oftentimes those are in transition moments, not when they're really facing a low block. And they don't really face a lot of low blocks because they're not a build-up team, right? They're not the team that controls. They're controlling, I believe, the lowest amount of possession right now, or at least second lowest in the Premier League. So they don't face a lot of low blocks. So basically, what are they going to do? They're just going to get the ball out wide and try to find Chris Wood in the box. Chris Wood, second most aerial duels won by forwards other than Dominique Calvert-Lewin this season. So my guess is they're going to do kind of similar to what they did in the FA Cup meeting, and where they had success was just sending in those crosses. And so it really just comes down to, can Nottingham Forest hit on some of those crosses, or can they hit on their set pieces? But honestly, probably going to be a very, very low event type of match like the previous two matches have been. How about we go to a match that probably isn't going to be low event, hopefully. Manchester City and Brighton. City really struggled to break down Nottingham Forest slow block. No way playing through the middle of the pitch like they really wanted to. It just kind of ended up being, let's get the ball to Doku and let's let him take defenders on 1v1 and hopefully he can create a chance off of it. And other than that, they didn't really do anything. zero point 0.9 expected goals in the match for Manchester City. Erling Haaland had 17 touches. That was the fewest of any Manchester City player. The clear plan from Nottingham Forest was to neutralize him, double him, Milinkovic and Murillo were basically just doubling him for most of the match. And that kind of tends to happen now with City is that they rely a lot on their wingers to win those 1v1s, cut inside to create a shot or get that cross into Erling Haaland because teams, if they can just take Erling Haaland away, there's just really not much threat from City comparatively to years past. So, now this match is going to be a little different because they're not going to be facing a low block. Brighton's going to press them high. Or at least not press them high. They're going to at least play, a mid to high block, and they're going to play a high defensive line. Per Mark stats, Brighton has the third highest average defensive line behind only Arsenal and Manchester City. And the reason Arsenal and Manchester City have the high defensive lines is because they're the ones usually controlling possession. And they're usually the ones that are pinning teams in and having that really high rest defense so they can counterpress and win the ball. Now, Manchester City hasn't been effective at doing that, but Arsenal has. And that's the reason why those have those high defensive lines. Brighton's not that team. Like, uh, that high defensive line has got them in trouble a lot for a lot of the season. And Manchester City took advantage of that in the previous meeting. That's how Holland scored their lone goal, and that's really what they're going to have to do in this match. They're going to have to play those balls in behind, because Brighton presses high, they press high in a man-to-man fashion, and those direct balls over the top are available to them. So getting Holland in those 1v1s is probably going to be City's best bet and how they're going to create their highest quality chances, quite frankly. Now, the flip side of it, Brighton in possession. I got to be honest. I keep thinking about the previous meeting between these two, and I think it was one of City's worst defensive performances I've seen under Pep. They've had a lot of bad ones, but this one was specifically horrible because they were playing like a 4-2-4-ish like defensive block. It was obviously morphing, between whatever the wide players were coming up or back or whatever. But they were so compact, almost it looked a lot like Unai Emery's Aston Villa, where it was just so compact, trying to deny space for the middle. And that's not what Brighton does. Brighton vacates the middle of the pitch. They push five guys up on the final line, and they want to play direct balls in behind. Consistently as the match went along, when City had a 1-0 advantage, Brighton was getting 2v1s out wide over and over and over again. And they were just sending direct balls just right over the top and creating chance after chance after chance. Now, with the addition of Nico Gonzalez into the midfield, I think City has done a lot better of a job of denying teams of playing through the middle. But they still struggle facing those direct balls. If you don't believe me, go watch their second leg against Real Madrid, where Real Madrid just was like, all right, we'll just throw direct balls up there. We'll get in 1v1s and we'll beat you. Now, it is Brighton obviously doesn't have the quality of Real Madrid, but in any case, they definitely do have the game plan under Herzler to take advantage of what City is weakest at, which is just playing a high line and actually counterpressing. I looked this up. Since the beginning of February, City has the fourth worst passes per defensive action. So if you're going to play that compact of a mid block and you're not very good at defending teams over the top, by the way, Ake, Akanji, and Stones are all still out. So if you're not able to hit on the press, you're not able to hit, you're struggling defending teams in behind, like your teams are going to create a lot of chances against you. And really the how to play Brighton is to play a low block, right? They've struggled all season against it because Herzler has this one way of playing. And if they can't play that way and they have to try to break down this low block, they just cannot do it. Now, I know they beat Fulham 2-1. Their only goal that wasn't a penalty came off a set piece. From non-penalty situations, they created zero point 0.7 expected goals off of 8 shots. They weren't effective at all at breaking down Fulham. So that's not City's game plan, though. They're not going to just sit in a low defensive block and say, "Hey, you're Brighton, like try to break us down." That doesn't happen under Pep. So I think this is a great match for Brighton. Brighton is so good against these type of teams that like to press high and like to play high defensive lines, right? Everybody's wondering, hey, why has Brighton gone on this great run lately? I think they were pretty fortunate to actually beat Fulham. I think that match should have ended 1-1, but beating Chelsea twice, beating Southampton, beating Bournemouth, beating Newcastle. What do all those teams have in common? They're high pressing teams that play high defensive lines and allow Brighton to get 1v1s against the back line. So here's another situation where Brighton can be very successful. But now mark this down on your calendar. After the international break, They're at home against Nottingham Forest, and I can guarantee you they're going to struggle trying to break down Nottingham Forest, just like they did in the previous meeting when they lost 7-0. All right, let's move on to Southampton and Wolves, a match that, quite frankly, can I say this? Could put the relegation battle just completely dead if Wolves wins this match and both Leicester and Ipswich lose. Be a nine, it would be a 9 point gap. I think that's too much to overcome with what, 9 matches left to play, 8 matches left to play. I'm not good at math. Um, I included this in my Substack article. Go look at Southampton's pass map from the match against Liverpool. I don't think I've ever seen this before. It's just a bunch of guys just like floating somewhere in the middle of the pitch and just no passes being made at all. There's just a couple passes being made back and forth between the midfield. No real ball progression going forward other than what do we got? Like 16 passes up to Sulemana. Just direct balls up there, but just really nothing happening at all. And for Southampton in possession, they haven't created chances against anybody. So what do you make think you're going to do it here against Wolves? Wolves has been pressing high a lot recently as well. Like they're not just, let's just sit back in a 5-4-1 like they were early on under Pereira. Against Everton over the weekend, they had a pass per defensive action of 7.4. Against Fulham, they had a pass per defensive action of 9. Not to say they're good at forcing high turnovers, but it highlights that maybe they can at least press teams high in a man-to-man fashion and force them to play direct balls over the top. So if Southampton is going to be forced into doing that, how are they going to be successful? They weren't successful against Liverpool. They haven't been successful against anybody who can press them high effectively. So they're going to fall into that trap and they're going to struggle. And the previous meeting, it was kind of the same thing happening. Southampton created zero point 0.6 expected goals off of 9 shots. They didn't have a single shot on target. So I don't really see how they're going to be successful in possession here. Now, for Wolves in possession, Cunha being out, like we mentioned last week, is troubling for them because he is the guy who likes to drop deep to create space for guys to make runs in behind and pull defenders with him. And with Southampton, as I've mentioned before, playing pretty much a straight man-to-man under Juric, that could leave some space in for, those balls over the top. Ait Nori has been a very key player for Wolves in that aspect. Cunha being that decoy or being using counter movements between him and Ait Nori, who typically pushes high up the left wing, has been really successful. Ait Nori has received the second most progressive passes of anybody on Wolves, which is kind of weird to think about for, a left back in some aspects. But it's because he's very good in 1v1 situations against the opposing fullback. So Wolves like to use him kind of as a target man, more or less. So they've been very successful getting up that left side of the pitch. Almost 40% of their attacks are coming from there. Southampton's likely going to press them high. They have nothing else to lose. They've been going man-to-man pressing for a long time. So, the pass per defensive action under Juric is about the same it was under Martin. And, expected goals allowed has gotten worse. So, not really much else to say other than Wolves is probably going to create a lot of chances off these direct balls. Look for Ait Nori if you're, somebody who's in the I don't play fantasy Premier League, but if you're somebody into that, maybe Ait Nori is a look. I don't know. Again, I don't play, so I don't really know what his price is or if that's even a good move. But all I know is that he's probably going to touch the ball a lot in this match. Next one, Bournemouth Brentford. Now this is fun. I'm glad they put this in prime time. This is a really, really fun match. Um, so Brentford's press has gotten a lot better as the season has gone along. And one thing I want to highlight is their ability to just stop teams from dribbling. We know that Bournemouth, one of the ways that they consistently are able to break teams down and why they're really, really good and why they're creating a lot of chances is quite frankly just because they got guys who can dribble past you. And when we have so many teams in the Premier League now that are basically going man-to-man pressing, if you have ball carriers and dribblers who can just get past the guy, it completely wrecks every man-to-man type system because then what happens? All right, if he gets free and he's dribbling, well, somebody's got to come off his man to stop the ball, which leaves another man free, and it snowballs after that. So Brentford this season is allowing the sixth lowest successful take on percentage in the Premier League. And their press is now up to seventh in danger zone losses forced. And since January 25th, they have the sixth lowest passes per defensive action. The Brentford press is really, really good. Now, Bournemouth is likely going to play pretty direct in this match. Instead of trying to play through Brentford's pressure, they're probably going to play direct balls up to Semenyo and even Nielsen and try to win some second balls, which is not necessarily a bad method to go by. But Brentford has been very good at defending long balls this season, sixth lowest long ball completion rate allowed. The main worry here for Brentford, though, is crosses, specifically in the wide areas. Milos Kerkez is incredible. The way he's able to just bomb forward. There's a great article in Opta the Analyst this week, specifically highlighting Kirkez and just how effective he has been as I would say probably one of, if not the best left back in the Premier League this season. Most overlapping off-ball runs, 237 this season. That is the most compared to second is Anthony Robinson, and then it's like a complete drop off after those two guys. Just his work rate is crazy. And him and Semenyo combining and him getting into the space where he can actually send in those type of crosses is going to cause Brentford some problems. Brentford has struggled defending crosses all season long. They're 16th in crosses completed in the penalty area. And in the previous meeting, Bournemouth completed five crosses, which is a big reason why they created 2.6 expected goals. So good, but not necessarily like a good or a bad matchup here for either team. Just Bournemouth has advantages in terms of wide areas and crosses. We'll just see how effective Brentford's press is. For Brentford in possession, they were not good against Aston Villa. Much different opponent, though. One thing that Brentford did do well in the previous meeting against Bournemouth is their build-up patterns out wide to progress the ball were pretty effective. And, if you look at their pass map, it was basically just, utilizing Ethan Pinnock as the wide left center back, dropping in, pushing Keane Lewis Potter up, and then, using him dropping deep to use bounce passes to Janelt, which allowed them just to, once they got it back centrally, they were trying to play balls off the back line, specifically targeting Wisa, and they actually scored their third goal with that exact pattern. Now, that's way easier said than done against Bournemouth because we know that Bournemouth loves to transition from a zonal to a man-to-man press, and they're relentless and they want to pin you to one side of the pitch and they want to force you to play out wide. So it's really going to come down to is Bournemouth able to suffocate Brentford in those wide areas and force them to play balls over the top? Zabrani is back for Bournemouth, which is obviously huge for them. He is so good at reading those balls when teams try to play over the top because what oftentimes Bournemouth will do is they'll vacate the middle of the pitch with their man-to-man press, and that area in the middle is wide open, and it's reliant on the center backs of reading the play and pushing forward and snatching those balls when teams try to play through the center. It's all about just reading the game for your Iola's team. So I think you need to really watch those patterns and see how effective those are for Brentford to see if they're actually going to be successful in this match. Now, from a Brentford perspective, it might just be time to go back to old school Thomas Frank. 3-5-2 direct counter-attacking football. I think that may be their best bet here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Frank do it because, Bournemouth, when you can beat the first line of the pressure and especially get them in transition, they're not very good defending in it. They're 17th in final third of box entry conversion rate allowed and 14th in expected threat allowed. So it'll be an interesting match. The previous one ended 3-2. Brentford scored off a throw-in. Damsgaard put one in the near post, and then, like I said, the third goal came with that build-up pattern out wide, and then Wisa playing off the back line. So Really fun, interesting match, and hopefully a lot of chances. And I'm really glad they put this in prime time because of all the matches this weekend, I'm most excited for this one. All right, let's go to Sunday. Arsenal and Chelsea, a little London derby. Um, there are some complexities to this match with build-up patterns and how teams are actually going to progress the ball against each other, but I think it's actually pretty simple. It just comes down to physicality. Chelsea is not a physical team out of possession. They're continually trying to press teams high, and the teams that can play direct balls in behind have hurt them, or teams that can play through the middle, which Arsenal is improving in that aspect. If you look at recent matches against teams like Brighton or Manchester City, and you see how some of those teams have scored some of those goals, a lot of them are just direct balls, 1v1, forward against defender, and Chelsea has not been able to defend them. One aspect of that is if you are consistently not able to close down and force high turnovers off of your press, well, then teams have time to pick out those type of balls to get balls in behind, right? Those balls typically aren't accurate if they're consistently under pressure. If the defenders, specifically go look at the Matoma goal. I can't remember if it was FA Cup or Premier League. The goal that Matoma scored, it came from Van Bruggen. He baited the press in. He had plenty of time to pick out whatever pass he wanted, and he did. So, not to say that's going to work every single time, but you know, Arsenal now having Marino as a target man really kind of helps in that aspect, right? Because before, Havertz wasn't really very good at winning aerial duels. He wasn't very good at, even winning ground duels. Moreno's a big body in there that can really be physical and cause Chelsea's defenders problems. Now, without without Lavia available, Chelsea loses a lot of defensive cover. I assume he is still out. I'm gonna keep talking as I'm doing this just to make sure I'm actually correct in that aspect. Um, he is. Wait, Lavia's back. Okay, well that actually helps Chelsea in this aspect. Now, everything I said before that it still remains true, right? Because if you're not able to hit home on the press and you're able to, play balls in behind against 1v1 against defenders, which, Arsenal is capable of doing, that's still plausible here. Now, with Lavia back in the lineup, what that helps Chelsea is not allowing teams to play through the middle and having a defensive ball winner. Him and Caicedo together are so good. Allows Fernandez to push forward, but in the defensive aspect of things, that is going to cause Arsenal maybe some problems. Now, Arsenal in the previous meeting basically was just trying to play through the wide areas. And I think they ended up with 1.8 expected goals in that match. They were basically just trying to play through Saka, which is what they did a lot, obviously, when he was healthy. It's just, let's overload his side of the pitch. Let's try to get 5v4, 4v3 situations and try to progress the ball that way. Now Arsenal has one true winger, right, available. So I think it's going to be a lot of trying to play direct over the top of Chelsea's press. We could see some aspects of Odegaard dropping deep, and Rice pushing forward in the left half space, or things like that. But Nwaneri is not a true winger, and he wants to play. He wants to tuck inside and play a little bit more there. So interesting match in that aspect of how successful is Arsenal playing through the middle now that Lavia is playing alongside Caicedo. We'll see. I mean, Arsenal struggled against low blocks. I mean, if Chelsea was an effective low block defending team and just sat in like Manchester United did, I think they'd have a lot of success against Arsenal, but they're not designed to play that way. So, could give Arsenal some relief and maybe some success. The other thing you have to remember about this matchup is Chelsea is 16th in XG per set piece allowed. We know how good Arsenal is on corners. So, we may see Arsenal favor, try to win a lot of those corners and set pieces and maybe just rely a little bit on those. There's obviously the other aspect of the title race is over and the Champions League is now the most important thing. So, not saying Arsenal isn't going to take this serious. Like it's a London derby. Of course they're going to take it serious, but there's always that added element of it's now or never with the title race, you know. Um, Now, from the opposite end of this spectrum, What happens when Chelsea has the ball? What happens when if Arsenal just decides we're just going to sit in our usual, 4-4-2 low to mid defensive block and Chelsea, go ahead. Here, you can have the ball. Try to break us down. Chelsea's not going to be able to do it. I can already tell you that. It's been a problem all season. Actually, it's been a problem for 2 seasons for Chelsea. They don't have a target man where they can send crosses into. They consistently are trying to play through the middle. It's too congested. They can't play through there. And they just end up settling for a ton of shots from outside the box. If you don't believe me, just go watch the Leicester match again. Take away the penalty that Palmer had in the 22nd minute. 18 shots, one shot had an XG rating above zero point 0.1, and it was actually 0.11 was the rating on it. In the end, they couldn't even create more than one expected goal from open play against Leicester's low defensive block. Think about that for a second. That's horrible. That's awful. And I'm sure that if Arsenal decides to press high, which they definitely could, and I think Chelsea may struggle actually uh, playing through Arsenal's pressure, they'll probably, use Lavia and Caicedo as a double pivot. They're more than likely going to utilize Palmer and Enzo Fernandez, utilizing counter movements, one dropping deep, one pushing forward, to try to pull Arsenal center backs out of position. They can definitely try and do that, but I mean, in the end, they're going to have to win duels. It's pretty simple, right? If you look at Chelsea's wingers, like they've been pretty decent in 1v1 situations. Arsenal is very, very good, not only defending in transition, they're very good. Even if you try to pull center backs out of position, they're essentially playing like four center backs across their back line. Depending like if they have Calafiori and Timber back there, then it's basically four center backs. Like it's a very very difficult defense to break down. Um, so really, where I think Chelsea maybe can be most successful is hitting Arsenal in those transition and counterattacking moments. I keep saying it, and I'll just keep saying it. Chelsea's a way better transition team than a build-up team. They really should just try as much as they can to get in transition, similar to how Liverpool does, right? Now Liverpool he tries to get in transition, because they have target men they can send balls to. But like Chelsea, they really should be trying to play more like Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. I think really that's the peak of what Chelsea can be. I mean, can you imagine Madueke and Palmer and Jackson if he was healthy? Right now Nkunku and Pedro Neto, like all of those guys. If you just say, hey, once we win the ball, let's just go forward. Let's try to hit teams quickly. Let's stop trying, play through teams and try to control. Let's just try to hit them and play through them. It's what they did under Pochettino for most of the end of the second half of last season, and they were incredibly successful. So I understand Maresca wants to raise the ceiling. I understand he wants to create a culture of a team that can control possession. But really, the best way to hit Arsenal in this match, and even though Arsenal is really good defending in transition, is to just hit them in direct counterattacking opportunities. So I think that's where Chelsea's going to have their most success. Now, Fulham and Tottenham. So riddle me this. Tottenham faced the third best crossing team in the Premier League last Sunday, conceded 2 goals off of crosses, and now they head over to West London to face the best crossing team. How do you think this is going to go? How do you think it's going to go? I think it's going to end horribly. One thing I really want to highlight about Ange's system and how it just can be exploited over and over and over again is because he wants his fullbacks to push really high up in their 2-3-5 buildup. It leaves so much space out wide when you lose the ball. Now, the theory behind it is it's very difficult to create chances from those wide areas, right? Like comparatively to playing through the middle. So, that's what Ange values, and he's okay giving up that space in the wide areas. And if you want to know why Tottenham has struggled forever when they don't have Romero and Van de Ven available, is because they don't have defenders who can get out there and defend in those wide areas when you leave that much space. It's been a huge criticism of him for a long time, and Go watch, go watch the Bournemouth goal, uh, the first Bournemouth goal. Kirkez gets the ball right above the 18-yard box, steals it, and dribbles with all the way to the other opponent's box without anybody getting within even like 5 yards of him. Sends it across the back post. Boom, 1-0. Anthony Robinson can do the exact same thing. He's probably going to bomb over and over down that left side of the pitch, similar to how Kirk has did against Tottenham. And Fulham is just going to send in cross after cross after cross. Tottenham is allowing the second most crosses into their penalty area this season. Tottenham, not Leicester, not Ipswich. Excuse me, third most. Sorry, third most crosses. That's crazy. That's terrible. Um, and the other aspect of this is like Fulham's build-up patterns out wide have been pretty good. They've been much improved under Marco Silva this season, using 3-4 man combinations. Tottenham forced one high turnover against Bournemouth. One. They're basically facing like the exact same team in possession. So I think this is a horrible matchup for Tottenham. I think Fulham's going to create a ton of chances here. Anthony Robinson's probably going to have a huge match bombing down the left side of the pitch. So great matchup here for Fulham. You know, the the thing about Tottenham in possession also, their decision making is just horrible in build up. Like it's kind of that simple. We're less than 30 seconds into the match. Everybody is just pressing Tottenham high, man-to-man fashion. Like, you can see their 2-3-5 build-up, and it's just like Bournemouth's got everybody pinned man-to-man, and there's just no passing option other than just send it long. But Ange doesn't want them to do that. Like he wants usually, he was using, uh, sometimes it was Kevin Danso, sometimes it was, I can't see what the midfielder is. I think it was Bentancur, dropping in to play a bounce pass. Well, where are you playing the bounce pass to? Everybody's covered. Like that's the problem with Tottenham. I mean, we were less than 30 seconds into the match. Romero just kicks one right at Even Nielsen, and he has a huge chance in on net. Same thing, you look even further into the match, we're even like less than with 3 minutes and 41 seconds on the clock. Danso is acting as an inverted center back. He tries to receive the ball to a bounce pass, but there's nobody to bounce pass the ball to because Bournemouth had everybody covered to the side of the pitch where they were playing it. So he ends up playing an errant pass back and creates another high quality chance for Bournemouth. So the reason I want to highlight that is not only can Fulham be the not only Fulham can, excuse me, not only can Fulham be a very effective low block defending team, but they've been pressing high more and more as the season has gone along. They usually transition from a 4-4-2 into a man-to-man press, and they were very effective in their FA Cup match specifically against Manchester United. They didn't force a lot of high turnovers, but they certainly forced Manchester United into playing a lot of direct balls up to the forwards, which United obviously wasn't able to win any of those. And Fulham is a very physical and a very good team at winning those second balls. So the same aspect can be applied here against Tottenham because they don't have a target man to play to up there. So they have to play short. So look for Fulham to actually force a lot of high turnovers here and cause Tottenham some problems. The other aspect is like, okay, Tottenham's not breaking down Fulham's low block. I saw, successful take on percentage. I'm going to highlight that in a second for Manchester United. Tottenham, 39.6%. That is the lowest successful take on percentage in the Premier League. They can't play through the middle. They don't have a target man in the middle. And when you don't have wingers who can beat guys 1v1 and get to the byline and send it across, you have a lot of problems. I don't see how they're creating anything here against Fulham, which is why you see Fulham as a pretty heavy favorite here. Um, so that's Fulham and Tottenham. Final Premier League match. Again, I'll have a full preview on my Substack for the EFL Cup final. Go read that. It'll be free and available to everybody. I'm just kind of sticking to the Premier League for this podcast. Manchester United and Leicester, Van Nistelrooy derby. I don't see how Manchester United is going to have a lot of success here. Like I just mentioned, successful take on percentage. United second lowest in the Premier League, 40.8% this season. Um, so the same things that I just mentioned for Tottenham kind of apply to Manchester United as well. If you're going to face a team that plays low block, like Leicester does, 4-4-2, which they, like I mentioned, they did a great job against Chelsea over the weekend, and you don't have a structure or a build-up pattern of playing through the middle, which United does not right now. You need a target man in the middle you can send crosses into, and you definitely need fullbacks or wingers to either beat their guy in 1v1 situations or have fullbacks who can get forward and overlap and actually create a lot of those chances via crosses. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Just settle for shots for outside the box? Try to dribble through teams? Like, there's really only a few ways to actually break down low blocks. United can't do any of that. So, how are they going to be effective here if Leicester just decides to sit in their 4-4-2? Now, with that being said, these two met in the FA Cup on, I believe it was February 7th. It was a Friday. Um, Leicester pressed United, and they pressed them incredibly effectively. 38 danger zone losses forced, three of those leading to a shot for Leicester, which is pretty embarrassing from a Manchester United perspective. But this entire season has been embarrassing for United. Leicester's 14th in the Premier League in danger zone losses forced and 17th in passes per defensive action. So I'll be flat honest. No matter what Manchester United tries, if they try to play out of the back, they try to they try to build out of the back here against Leicester. If they're forced, into some turnovers, then that's going to create chances for Leicester going forward. If they're just going to have to send balls over the top of Leicester's press, they don't have target man who can win duels and second balls. So I don't really know what to do here for United. I'll be honest, as a kind of a separate discussion. Um, United basically needs like a whole new team, and they've already spent an ungodly amount of money. So if you're wondering like how does United rebuild, they need to sell their entire like sell off most of their assets and just bring in entirely new players to fit Amorim's system because they just it's a mixture of really what it is with United. They've never been that good of a pressing and like running team, like a team that can provide a lot of intensity. If you ever just comparatively watch, just think about it this way. Comparatively, think about the work rate of a team of Manchester United compared to Bournemouth. If Manchester United had the work rate that Bournemouth had, man, they might be going places. But they don't. And they never will until they actually get a ton of new players in there. All right. And finally, Leicester in possession here. Their offense has been a complete embarrassment. Last eight Premier League matches, they have not scored against a team not named Tottenham. Seven of their last eight matches, they have not scored, and the underlying numbers are horrible. Zero point 0.2 expected goals against Arsenal, 0.5 against Brentford, 0.4 against West Ham, and zero point 0.1 over the weekend against Chelsea. Now, in the previous meeting against United. I'm trying to remember what their exact XG was. I'm guessing it wasn't that good. Again, this is the wonderful aspect of me not being able to edit podcasts. 0.78 expected goals in the previous meeting for in that FA Cup match. If you look at Leicester's pass map from that match, it was basically just trying to build through the wide areas. They had no interest in playing through the middle. Um, and I think it kind of highlights like the limitations of what Leicester is right now, right? It's fine to overload the wide areas. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But if your target men in the middle are Jordan Ayew and Jamie Vardy, there's your first problem. Not the most optimal strategy to have those two guys in 2025, maybe 2015, we can have a different discussion. But 10 years later, no, not having those two guys as your main attack is bad. Now, both of those guys, they've been using them as target men in some aspects. They've been dropping them deep in build-up, and some of their build-up patterns in these kind of wide areas have been like somewhat successful if you watch them. Um, but they also are consistently turning the ball over in their own end of the pitch. They have the most danger zone losses of anybody in the Premier League, and when you aren't able to utilize, typically when you drop a forward deep, it's to create space in behind so the guys out wide can make runs, or you can use them as bounce passes to create space and play balls in behind. Leicester has averaging the fourth fewest progressive passes, and they have the third lowest long ball completion rate. So if you're not able to open teams up for those type of progressive passes, and when teams press you, if you're forced to just play the ball over the top and you're not effective at playing long balls, like you can see why a team like Leicester would struggle. So United pressed Leicester very effectively in that FA Cup match. If they bring that same type of intensity, I just don't see how Leicester creates a lot of high quality chances here, unless maybe they come from a counter-attacking situation. But even though, like Ayu and Ayu and Vardy in the counter-attack is not really frightening me, if I'm Manchester United. So interesting match, and honestly, probably a very, very low event type match. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Unexpected Goals, Match Week 29 preview. Again, thank you all for listening. I am going to hopefully get this available on Spotify. Hopefully, you're listening to this on Spotify by now. Um, but it'll be available on my Substack or Apple Podcasts as well. I'll be back. We'll have international break coming up. Um, don't know if I'll do a podcast for that. But in any case, I'll be back for match week 30 of the Premier League. So thank you for listening to this episode of Unexpected Goals and enjoy the matches over the weekend.